Hello everyone. Welcome to SEMU-YÉOL lecture. My name is Yongju and my last name is Kim. I am an artist. Today, I would like to talk about 3 topics. First, I will talk about what my creative process actually looks like. Second, I will talk about what I've learned about survival from my creative process. And lastly, I will talk about why I make art. While talking about these 3 topics, I would like to also share with you my journey from starting as a jewelry artist to becoming a sculpture artist. Let me first start by going back to the period between 2009 and 2015. The first topic will focus on that time period. At the time, I was mostly focused on making wearable art. Here are some examples of what I created back then. Some of you may not know what material is used to make these wearable works of art. They are made with Velcro, hook and loop fasteners. In case you don't know what Velcro fasteners look like, this is what they look like. It's what you use to fasten your shoes or wrap your cables. When people see my work, they are often surprised that I was able to come up with this idea. But the funny thing is, I did not start off with the idea that I will make art from Velcro fasteners. I think there is a misconception surrounding the creative process. Many people think that we have to start with a brilliant idea. But my experience has been very different. It may come to you as a surprise, but I think the creative process is similar to the mining process. Most people don't think of mining as an exceptionally creative process. So I want to start talking about my creative process by comparing it side by side to the mining process. When people mine for minerals and metals like silver, the process often starts with prospecting. Prospecting is the act of finding a site for mining. And this is how geologists prospect. In the video, the geologist says, you are looking for some indicator minerals that they themselves do not contain silver, but they are associated with silver. That's also what I do. Although I aspire to make beautiful artwork, in the beginning of my creative process, I'm merely looking for indicators that are not themselves a representation of beauty, but are somehow associated with beauty. And to do that, just like this geologist, I look very closely, because the indicators are not obvious at first sight. So everywhere I go, whether it's the grocery store, hardware store, or on the street, I'm always looking very closely and slowly for these indicators. And as I do this, there is usually a material that makes me feel as if there is something there. And so when I find a material that I have this feeling with, I collect them. Just like how geologists collect rock and soil samples from a potential mine. So in the case of Velcro fasteners, the same thing happened. I went to the hardware store, I looked very closely and slowly. And when I saw the Velcro fastener, I felt that there was something there. So I collected them. After prospecting, the next step is evaluating. This is where you determine whether mining the site will yield enough silver to make the project financially profitable. So in this step, geochemical scientists conduct experiments on the rock samples collected by geologists. This is what a rock sample looks like. Since they cannot tell how much silver is there just by looking, they crush, grind, pulverize, and burn them. This is a routine process they have developed to find out how much silver is in these rocks. And if the sample has enough silver, the site from which the sample was taken gets picked for mining. I do something very similar. I evaluate my choice of materials the way miners evaluate their site, using basic routines. But instead of crushing, grinding, pulverizing, and burning, I make shapes such as circles, oval, squares, and hexagons. And this slide is from 2008, when I began evaluating Velcro fasteners. And this is my routine process. For example, here is a picture of an oval shape I made while evaluating Velcro fasteners. Just to be clear, I did not make these for the sake of making shapes. I did it because making these shapes helps me find out how much unexpected qualities are in the materials. And this is very much like how geologists go through a routine process to find out how much silver is in the site. And depending on how much unexpected qualities I can uncover, I pick the material for further development, the way geologists pick a site for mining. The next step after evaluating is extracting. If the proposed mine is considered profitable, miners and geologists start the extraction process. And they do this by drilling holes and digging a tunnel to make way to the mineral ore body. And in this process, there are two important constraints. The first is that the tunnel must not collapse, because if it does, miners can die, get hurt, or get stuck. Interestingly enough, I also have the same constraint, except it's the process that must not collapse, because if it does, I can die, get hurt, or get stuck. I don't mean physically dead or hurt, of course, but psychologically. You might think this is funny, but I think this is very serious, given how many artists have died from depression and suicide. The second constraint the miners have is that they have to extract as much minerals as possible. I also have the same constraint, except I must extract as much unexpected qualities as possible. This also has to do with not collapsing. Because ideally, the miners would like to extract the entire mineral ore body. But they cannot, because if they do, the tunnel will collapse. So what they do is they extract them in small parts and take it back to the lab piece by piece. And this is what I do as well. For example, let's go back to the oval shape I made in the evaluation step. The oval shape is the site I am extracting from. When I am extracting from this site, I am noticing that there are various unexpected qualities that I can investigate it further. I might find the texture unexpected, the color gradation unexpected, or I may even find the act of rolling the shape by hand unexpected. But I cannot extract these unexpected qualities all at once. Because if I try to do that, I will become overwhelmed, which can lead me to collapse psychologically. So what I do is I extract these unexpected qualities one by one. So let me show you a video where I just pick the act of rolling the shape to extract any unexpected qualities I can find. So this is how I extract. The final step in mining is to refine the metals from the minerals. For example, the geologist may take the minerals and experiment with it to explore what other metals they can find. And they may find not only silver, but also tin, lead, and zinc. Sometimes even gold. This is also what I do. For example, after deciding to investigate the act of rolling, I started to explore what other acts of rolling I can find. And this led me to discover winding, twisting, and coiling. I even discovered a new kind of rolling, which you can see here. This is the refining process that led me to my work. As you can see, my work is not a product of a brilliant idea. It is a product of a personal process, one that can be explained simply and plainly, a process that has helped me make art with Velcro fasteners for the past 13 years. It's sometimes surprising to think that it has already been 13 years. In fact, until a few years ago, I was asked a question. You have been making art with Velcro fasteners for the past 10 years. Don't you want to work with the new materials? I was surprised. After all, nobody asked a cello player, you have been playing the cello for the past 10 years. Don't you want to start playing the piano? But to answer the question more seriously, limiting myself to Velcro fasteners has helped me grow and mature as an artist. In fact, without Velcro fasteners, I may not have been able to make such a smooth transition to becoming a sculpture artist. Which brings us to the second topic I want to share with you today, which is what I've learned about Survivor from my creative process. To talk about the second topic, I want to return to the time period between 2013 and 2015. And this is not only a time period when I developed as a jewelry artist, but also when I started to experiment with large-scale sculptural works of art. And now, before I talk about this second topic, I want you to put aside the image of mining for a second, because I want you to prepare yourself for a new image. Take a moment to imagine a ping pong player playing a game of ping pong in the Olympics. Because to share with you what I've learned about Survivor from the creative process, I wish to compare the creative process to a ping pong game. If to survive in a game of ping pong is to continue playing without losing, surviving in the creative process is to continue making without getting blocked. Let's watch a video of a master ping pong player in action. I want you to notice how the ball never touches the net and always lands on the other player's table. Watch again. There are rules of a ping pong game. If it's okay for the ball to touch the net or not land on the other player's table, would this still be a ping pong game? No. It is these rules that make a ping pong game a ping pong game. What I have come to notice is that to survive in a game of ping pong, one has to embody such rules and strive to follow them to maintain their integrity. And this is also what I've learned in my work with the Velcro fasteners. Some people think artists have no rules. But when I make decisions, I don't make them randomly. I embody a set of rules and I strive to follow them. Some of my rules are easy to articulate. For example, I always use Velcro fasteners as my primary material. But some rules are harder to articulate, like what rules I follow to make my work look the way it does. But I want to make clear that this is no more random than the unfolding of the ping pong game I just showed you. Now, let's watch the video one more time. This time, I want you to notice how the players' bodies return to their ready position and after hitting each ball. Watch again. When players start a game of ping pong, ideally, they begin by trusting that they can win. Then each time after hitting the ball, they have to recover this trust along with their mental and physical ability to be able to hit the next ball. But that's not all. Even if the players trust that they can win the game, they don't know how and when. So the players need something that keeps them in the game until the point when they do know how and when they can win the game. The point where they can recognize a chance for that one shot that can potentially end the game. And this is known as resilience. If the player lacks resilience, can they continue playing the game? No. What I've come to notice is that to survive in a game of ping pong, one has to embody such trust and continuously recover it to maintain their resilience. And this is also what I've learned in my work with the Velcro fasteners. And for example, every time I sit down to make, I do not know what foam I will make. Yet, I trust that I can make something interesting. So I start. Along the way, I sometimes end up with a shape I don't like. So I get blocked and I start doubting myself. But if I can recover my trust and keep making, I eventually arrive at a point where I get a vision of how the foam might be successfully completed. Of course, sometimes the vision doesn't work out, so I get frustrated again. And then I have to recover my trust, yet again, to keep making until I get another vision of how the foam might be completed. And finally, let's watch the ping pong game one last time. This time, I want you to notice how the first ball landed on the left, and the second on the right, and the third on the far right. Watch again. Ping pong players can serve a ball fast, high, left, in all sorts of different ways. Not only that, but they also return the balls in different ways. They may stretch their arm, run toward the ball, or twist their waist. The diversity of all these ways combined make up the variety of each player's actions. If the player lacks variety in their actions. Can they return a variety of balls? No. To play well, each player has to have a requisite variety of actions they can use to respond appropriately to any given moment. What I've come to notice is that to survive in a game of ping pong, one has to embody and expand a wide range of viable actions to maintain requisite variety. And this is also what I've learned in my work with Velcro fasteners. For example, to create my body of work, I accrued a number of different ways of shaping the Velcro fasteners in order to break through any blocks. I've also added a new red Velcro fasteners to my collection of materials and developed a reference library of the various shapes I've been able to produce. So in summary, this is what I've learned so far about surviving the creative process. And while I don't consider myself a master, I've learned that by merely surviving this process, my mastery of the craft has developed significantly. But there is one more thing, and that is the element of unpleasant surprises. Sometimes life throws at us an unpleasant surprise that makes us question our ability to survive as artists. Maybe we get a bad review, maybe lose a big source of our income, maybe we hit a finite limit of our ability and realize that we cannot make what we want to make. But what I've learned is that going through and overcoming such unpleasant surprises can help us transcend the finite limitation of our own visions and imaginations. And for example, around 2013, I began to experiment with large-scale sculptural work. So one day, I started cutting these little elements and attaching them together with the vision of growing it like a vessel. But at one point, the shape stopped growing upward. Instead, it responded by slouching down. It was because of gravity and weight. And this was an unpleasant surprise. The rule I had set for myself was to create a vessel. My range of action seems inadequate for achieving this. And the trust I had in my ability to successfully complete this work was severely shaken. But after several months of struggling, I arrived at this. I was completely surprised. Without going through and overcoming the unpleasant surprise, I would have never imagined making something like this. In fact, I still don't understand how I arrived at this shape. And that's the power of overcoming unpleasant surprises. As I developed myself, not only as a jewelry artist, but also as a sculpture artist, I have witnessed over and over again that if I'm willing and able to overcome unpleasant surprises, I can create something far more interesting and beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined. And this helps me realize that there still exist infinite possibilities. A large portion of my sculptural works of art was born out of such unpleasant surprises. And this is developing mastery not only in relation to craft, but also in relation to surprises. And this is developing mastery beyond survivor. It is what keeps me growing as an artist. Now, I'd like to end with the final topic of why I make art. Looking back at my career for the past 13 years, I have come to believe that I make art for 3 reasons. First of all, I make art because I want to transcend limitations. For example, my work transcends limitations of craft by using materials beyond the boundary of what is traditionally considered craft materials. And to be clear, I am not the only one doing this. For example, one artist I want to highlight is artist Dong-Chun Lee. And his work also transcends limitations of craft by using materials beyond the boundary of what is traditionally considered craft materials. And for example, he uses detergent bottles made of plastic to create jewelry. And here are some pictures of the work in context. I also transcend limitations of any one discipline by making art that belongs to multiple disciplines such as jewelry and sculpture. And to be clear, I am not the only one doing this. For example, one artist I want to highlight is artist Haerin Shin. She also transcends limitations of any one discipline by making art that belongs to multiple disciplines such as jewelry and sculpture. And for example, here is her jewelry work. Here is her sculpture work. The second reason why I make art is because I want to maintain self-integrity. What I mean by maintaining self-integrity is coming up with my own set of rules and values and taking responsibility for following them. For example, whenever I make any kind of art, one of the rules I believe I must follow is the practice of a high level of craftsmanship. Not all artists have the same rule. But this is a rule I made for myself, and I make art to express how important I believe this rule is. To be clear, I am not the only one doing this. For example, one artist I want to highlight is artist Shin Young Kim. For example, I believe that she also considers practicing high level of craftsmanship as one of her rules while making art. And her artwork expresses how important she believes this rule is. And this is her jewelry work. Another rule I believe I must follow when I make art is the practice of consistent and regular production. Not all artists have the same rule, but this is a rule I made for myself, and I make art to express how important I believe this rule is. To be clear, I am not the only one doing this. For example, one artist I want to highlight is artist Ho Yeon-jung. For example, I believe that she also considers practicing consistent and regular production as one of her rules while making art. And the body of work she showcases during her solo exhibition expresses how important she believes this rule is. And finally, the third reason why I make art is because I want to remind my audience of their own value. And let me explain what I mean by that. There are times in our lives when the social pressure and the weight of responsibility we feel is so much that we lose confidence and start to doubt whether we or our efforts are good enough. For example, when I was in college, there was social pressure to get plastic surgery, which made me doubt whether my appearance was good enough. And also, I am the oldest among my siblings and cousins. And when I was growing up, I felt responsible for getting good grades and entering a good university. Because otherwise, I felt as if myself or my efforts were not good enough. And maybe you have had a similar experience as well. I believe all of us have times when we experience something similar. In my most recent work, I decided to channel such pressure and weight directly into my creative process. As a result, the form of my artwork is now primarily shaped by pressure applied by my hands and the weight applied by gravity. While I was creating this recent body of work, I had a surprising realization. What I realized is that some of the most beautiful artifacts in nature were also made from pressure and weight. And for example, the mountains and valleys that we admire are made from pressure and weight. The waves that we admire are also made from pressure and weight. And this realization inspired me to think of my art as a reminder that even though the pressure and weight we experience can be painful, what we are producing under such pressure and weight is beautiful. That even when we have lost our confidence because of the pressure and weight we experience, it doesn't mean that our work is not worthy of being recognized and appreciated. And in fact, it is because we are willing to do our work under pressure and weight that our work deserves to be recognized and appreciated. I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to artist Soo-yeon Kim. The reason why I want to introduce you to Soo-yeon Kim is because she is an artist and a close friend whom I know personally to be making art under the significant pressure and weight of being a working mom. It is awe-inspiring to me that she is able to produce such beautiful work despite the significant pressure and weight she is under. When I look at her work, because I know how much pressure and weight she is under, I appreciate her work so much more. I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate the value of work Soo-yeon has created over the years. Today, I talk about these three topics. First, I shared with you what my creative process actually looks like. And second, I shared with you what I've learned about survivor from my creative process. And lastly, I shared with you why I make art. In the process of sharing these three topics, I have also shared with you my journey from starting as a jewelry artist to becoming a sculpture artist. I want to emphasize that I could not have done this alone. In other words, I could not have transcended limitations or maintained self-integrity without the support I felt viewing the many inspiring artists' work and hearing the encouragement from the supportive friends I had around me. When you see my work, I hope they are able to have a similar impact on you. In other words, I hope my work can provide the kind of support that I felt when viewing other inspiring artists' work. I understand that you may not be an artist, but I believe you also have limitations you want to transcend and self-integrity you want to maintain. As a result, I also believe that you too have times when you experience significant pressure and weight. So when that happens, I hope my work can help you see how beautiful and valuable you are. and even when you don't feel beautiful and valuable. Even when the pressure and weight you feel has taken away your confidence. In all these cases, I hope my work can remind you that no amount of pressure and weight can take away your intrinsic value. And as this happens, I also hope that it can rekindle your curiosity and wonder, opening you up to reimagine infinite possibilities. Thank you for listening.